let's get crazy in a game that just might, I don't know if outrageous, we can get outrageous enough in a game like this. Stephen Means, Andrew Gillis, and Stefan Krajisnik. Ohio State plays Purdue on Saturday for a chance to go 8-1, and it's time to get crazy. Stefan, get crazy.
300 rushing yards for Ohio State. I think their season high is around 280 as a team. They're going to surpass 300 in this game. I think it's a game where you can just let Quinshawn and Travion and James Peoples just cook, because this Purdue team allows about 240-ish rushing yards per game. This Purdue defense is not good, folks. It's not good, and I'm surprised that Oregon only scored 35 points on them. But that might be a situation we see where Ohio State might just score like 35, 40 points on them. It might not be an impressive number because they're just going to run all over them. The clock's going to keep rolling. The game's going to be done. They're just going to get out there and say, taking care of business. 300-plus rushing yards for Ohio State.
I think it's 6.7 yards allowed per carry for Purdue. It's the worst in the Big Ten. Worst in the Big Ten. Andrew, get crazy.
So Brandon Innis' season high is 45 yards. He had that against Western Michigan. We talked about the offensive line. Okay, well, maybe you want to keep them in the game because, you want to see them develop. You want to see Donovan Jackson get more reps at tackle. Carson Hinsman more reps at guard. They need more work, whatever. That doesn't really apply to the receivers. And I think if there were a week to say, or maybe a 2-week stretch to say, you know what, Emeka, you're good. We're second quarter, 21-0, you're good. Jeremiah, you're good. I think Brandon is going to have a really big game this week. I think they're going to work him in. I think this is exactly the type of game you want to work him in. Had a decent game against Penn State. Brandon Innis, I think, is going to be their leading receiver. I think he's going to go for over 100 yards. I think Brandon Innis is going to have a very, very big game because this is exactly the type of game where a player like Brandon Innis can eat, because I mentioned the 3 starters with Carnell, those are the 3 starters. I don't envision a scenario where those guys are playing deep into the second half. I can absolutely envision a scenario where it's 10-0 with 8 minutes left in the first quarter, and you start to see some wide receiver rotation. You start to see some wide receiver substitution. I think that's absolutely on the table for Ohio State, and I think Brandon Innis is going to cook this week because all of those other guys, you're saying, you know what, you've done enough this year. We hope to have a very long rest of the season. Put your feet up. Take your cleats off, relax, and I think Brandon Innis is going to have a very, very big week.
He'd be the 4th receiver to have a 100-yard game this season. I think Jeremiah has 2 or 3. Emeka Buka only has 1, and Carnell Tate only has 1, which would also be his career high if Brandon Innis gets that, because you want to know what his current career high is?
84.
I guess.
No, because I told you before we got on video. 58 yards on 1 catch.
That's right.
Against Purdue for a touchdown.
He did catch, yep.
You were there.
I was there, and I had forgotten about it, but here we are.
So mine has to do with receivers as well. Let me pull out my trusty phone to talk about this one here. So since Ryan Day became the head coach, Ohio State's had 3 games where they've had 3 wide receivers have 100 yards in the same game. They're 2-1 in those games. Against Oregon in 2021, they lost 35-28. Chris Olave, 12 catches, 126 yards. Garrett Wilson, 8 catches, 117 yards and a tutty. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 7 catches, 145 yards, and a tutty. And what's crazy about 2 tutties. And the crazy thing is he had like 2 catches for like 10 yards the week before that against Minnesota. So he went from not involved to now I'm getting ready to go break some school records. The second one came against Michigan State later that season. They won that game 56-7. Chris Olave, 7 catches, 140 yards, and 2 tutties. Garrett Wilson, 7 catches, 126 yards, 2 tutties. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 10 catches, 105 yards, 1 tutty. The other one came in 2022. Garrett and Chris are off in the NFL getting 1,000-yard seasons. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Buka, and Jaden Ballard. Emeka Buka, 7 catches, 116 yards, and a tutty. Marvin Harrison Jr., 6 catches, 102 yards, 2 tutties. And then Jaden Ballard, 4 catches, 113 yards, and a tutty. Between Emeka Buka, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and Brandon Innis. And I'll even throw Bryson Rogers in this mix as well. 3 of those guys are going to have 100 yards. And the reason why is we just got done talking about Purdue's rushing defense and how terrible that is. That's the worst in the Big Ten. Their passing defense is also the worst in the Big Ten. This is a very, very bad defense. And the last time Ohio State played a team who was that bad, I think it's like 9.3 yards per attempt is what they're averaging. The last time they played a team that was that bad was from this list. It was Michigan State. So that's what I'm going to say in this situation. Ohio State's going to have 3 100-yard receivers for this day. And that doesn't even mean they have to throw 50 times to get it. It's just simply because Purdue's that bad in coverage. All it takes is like 4 or 5 explosive plays, and all of a sudden, because that's what happened when Jaden Ballard got it. He had 1 explosive play, and the other 3 catches were not that much, and that's all it takes. So between the top 5 of Memeka Ibuka, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, and Bryson Rogers, 3 of those guys end up with 100-yard games against Purdue. That was crazy. That was crazy. That was crazy. Ohio State plays Purdue on Saturday. Get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial. $3.99 after that. See you after the game.